The elite's plan for total control is now fully exposed, and in this video, I want to go over all of the information tied back to BlackRock, the IMF, the Fed, and so many other organizations that are actually allowing for this to be accelerated. And of course, I will be including some words from Whitney Webb, so definitely stay tuned. And with that being said, welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. Let's dive on in real quick, and let's go back to March of this year, where we heard from Jerome Powell, the US Fed chair, saying that we are nowhere near pursuing a CBDC, won't spy on Americans. You know what's funny about this? Back in 2023, when banks started to collapse, we heard from the Fed that liquidity is fine. Strongest ever in the US. That's what we heard, right? And we now know that at the time, liquidity was still extremely constricted. And since then, we have grossly printed a massive amounts of money, which propped markets up, aka we are falsifying liquidity. The liquidity is actually not there. It's just more and more printing, more dollar inflation. It's nonsense. They continue to lie. And the fact that we know that this right here in front of us around the US pursuing a CBDC, we know that this is a lie. Let's go back to when we announced sanctions against Russia. It was on March 8th of 2022. Why is this important? Well, because the next day, we got Executive Order 14067, but everyone was distracted by the sanctions against Russia and what Russia was going to do. So this was right behind all of the big mainstream media headlines distracting you from the target. What this is ensuring responsible development of digital assets, aka utilizing DLT to explore CBDCs. They want to push a CBDC, and we know that the United States has been focused on a CBDC. But the thing is that they're not going to call it a CBDC. They're going to call it a digital dollar. It's going to be a stable coin. And we now know this because guess what? Congress, apparently, they passed a bill banning a Federal Reserve from issuing a CBDC, right? So now the Fed can't issue a CBDC. But the problem here is that everyone was believing this because this happened at the end of May, roughly. And what they actually banned was the term. They banned the term CBDC. They didn't ban the Fed from issuing a digital currency. They banned the Fed from issuing a CBDC. Just the term. They didn't even clarify what a CBDC actually is. And we now know that the US is trying to push for a stablecoin because Congress also introduced a bill, and this is a stablecoin bill back in the beginning of May. And this bill is to introduce stablecoins, specifically a government-issued stablecoin. Guess what a CBDC is? A government-issued stablecoin. This is where everyone's education on digital currencies becomes very important. You need to understand what a CBDC actually is. It is a government-issued stablecoin. The difference between a CBDC and a stablecoin is that a stablecoin is issued out by a private company. So if, let's just say Ripple, which is a big player around crypto, is issuing a stablecoin, that's a stablecoin. But if a government is issuing a stablecoin, it's technically classified as a CBDC. But we now know that Congress banned the CBDC. They're going to push for a stablecoin, and everyone's going to welcome this in, a great fashion. They're going to open their arms to it because it's not a CBDC, even though it technically is. And this is all a part of the full plan here. The sanctions against Russia accelerated all of this, and it allowed for this to happen on the back end. This is also why Russia is pushing for a CBDC. This is why all the BRICS nations are pushing for CBDCs. This is also why a lot of the BRICS nations are now warming up to utilizing blockchain, because it is all a part of the plan. Everything that we are seeing around Russia and around, the BRICS, it's all to accelerate this. Now I'm going to play a video clip from Whitney Webb, and this is actually from a podcast titled Controlled Banking System Demolition, Whitney Webb on CBDCs, the World Economic Forum, and Internet Privacy CEO Jamie Dimon. Check this out.
And I think they have more infrastructure to put in place before they want that to happen. So, I think people should essentially consider this crisis is very real. Now is the time to prepare, because there is a lull, but it is a planned lull. And after the lull is going to come a planned controlled demolition.
I was just about to say those words. It sounds like controlled demolition. Well, and people don't realize too, central bank digital currencies are going to involve these big banks. It's not going to be that it's going to be kind of tied entirely with them. So you'll have one account that's maybe a retail account, but another that's tied directly to the government. And it will be that infrastructure is going to be kind of tied together. Do you know exactly how that'll work? Because obviously a central bank digital currency, some might think, well, that would make the commercial banks obsolete. Why would you need a Chase Bank account if you have a CBDC and an account with the Fed? But it's not like that. There's actually an incentive to have fewer banks, because those banks will have that relationship with the central bank.
Will be allowed to have that relationship.
And you'll only bank with them. How will that work?
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess the model people can look to for this has actually already been implemented in Russia. So of course, Russia's central bank is working on a CBDC, but there's also the Spur coin that was launched by Sberbank, which I believe is Russia's biggest bank. And I think the Russian government is the majority owner of Sberbank, but the guy that runs Sberbank, Herman Graf, is a devoted, what would you call him? Like a devoted follower of Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, very much pushing for, the use of biometrics as payments and a lot of this other stuff that sort of gets referred to as, a coming technocracy, or the rollout of the fourth industrial revolution. And so it's very likely that JP Morgan is positioning itself to sort of be that equivalent in the United States. For example, you've already had them in the past few weeks openly push for mass adoption of biometric payments. They're going to start making it available to their clients, paying with your face, paying with your palm. Of course, Amazon is attempting to roll these types of payment methods out as well. And then more recently, you have Jamie Dimon in the past couple of days saying that private land, private property should be seized by the government for the purpose of developing so-called clean energy for climate change. So that tells you
15-minute cities, 15-minute cities. People should really look into those too.
Yeah, so Dimon is, for people that don't know, openly affiliated with the World Economic Forum, and he supports a lot of these policies as well. And JP Morgan, after any big consolidation move, is definitely one of the too big to fail banks that the federal government will move to protect at all costs. And I think Dimon's very aware of that. And essentially what will happen, I think, is, JP Morgan saying now we're rolling out this feature where you can voluntarily pay with your face or your fingerprints or a palm scan. But what happens when JP Morgan says, well, actually, we've decided for reason X, Y, and Z that this is the only way you'll be allowed to pay from now on. You give a bank like JP Morgan all that power, it's not going to be hard for them to do. Yeah. And unfortunately, because of the Silicon Valley Bank crisis and the resulting aftermath, you had people in the days after that pretty much saying that one of the big winners was already at that point, just days after the collapse, JP Morgan Chase, because so many people were opening and moving accounts there, because the federal government was essentially signaling, if you go to one of these too big to fail mega banks, your money will be safe.
Yep.
So, it's hard not to see this as a concerted policy push to get people to feel like their money is only safe in one of these giant mega banks that's on board for these agendas, whether it's CBDCs or biometric payments, programmable money. And I think it's pretty clear that Jamie Dimon is definitely going to be on board for all of that. So, if you're going to put your money with JP Morgan Chase because you think it'll be safe, well, yeah, it might be safe in a sense, but at what cost ultimately to your economic freedom and your civil liberties? I think these are the questions that people should be, asking themselves.
And of course, if you guys do want to go check out this full podcast, it's from Coin Stories Podcast. But, she does have a great overall outlook on this. When you really think about what's been happening, anyone that looks at the fiscal policy within the United States and technically even in the world, you would say, this is just ridiculous. It makes no sense. It's not sustainable. But this is exactly what they want. They want a controlled demolition so that they could push out a controlled digital system. I remember when everyone was arguing about how crypto is a fight against all of these, monopoly systems that these elites have put into place, aka, we look at more so fractional reserve banking and things like that. Crypto is an accelerant for the elite system. Think about it. I mean, if you look at Bitcoin, it's all on chain. All of this stuff is on chain. It's all digital. It's all trackable. It's all traceable. I want to interrupt the video real quick to let you guys know that I have officially partnered up with Bybit, the third largest crypto exchange out there, to offer you guys exclusive rewards and benefits when signing up with my link down in the description below. There's over $30,000 plus worth of welcome rewards that could be yours right now. All you have to do is sign up, trade, and utilize the exchange. This is one of the best exchanges out there, 24/7 support. Massive amounts of trading volume in a 24-hour period. They have access to pretty much any market that you can think of around crypto. So what are you guys waiting for? Go and sign up utilizing my link down in the description below and have a good time trading. So when we think about what's actually happening, they want to collapse this paper-based system. They want to get away from this paper-based system. This is also why I go back to 2020, right? Before we got hit with the pandemic, they were already warming us up to the idea of digital money. Then we got the pandemic, and immediately what they started pushing was physical cash usage is dropping. We need digital currencies. And then if you look at what happened since going all the way back to 2020, let's go all the way back to about roughly the beginning of 2020. So here we have January of 2020. Okay, this was the CBDC map worldwide. Now, obviously, yes, there was some proof of concepts, there was some research being done, but at the end of the year of 2020, so from January to January, this is January of 2020, here's January of 2021. This is how significant the CBDC accelerant happened in the whole year of 2020. Because the BIS, the IMF, the World Bank, all of them started to push the agenda heavily. And that's why when we look at what's happening right now around the world with CBDCs, it's becoming clear that this is exactly what they want. And the IMF told you this. Go all the way back to November 15th. We're talking about a whole year ago. Kristalina Georgieva, the director of the IMF, literally said, this is quote for quote, "This is not the time to turn back." Says that central bank digital currencies can replace cash. This is what the World Economic Forum also quoted. They want CBDCs to replace cash. They want to get rid of cash usage. And they will utilize anything that they can possibly use. Pandemics, major events, geopolitical tensions. That's why we look at what, what's happening around BRICS, because guess what? We sanction Russia. What's Russia going to do? They obviously still need to trade. They still need to do transactions. Well, now they're looking at, all of a sudden, crypto, digital currencies. Let's make an exchange. Now, guess what? It looks as though the US is weak because we're not doing anything around digital currencies, around crypto, around blockchain. All of a sudden, the US says, all right, well, we want to ban a CBDC because China and Russia is looking to launch a CBDC. So we're banning a CBDC. We want to push a stablecoin, which, like I said, it's all the same thing. They're doing this in reaction to what Russia is doing. But technically speaking, we accelerated this. We caused this to happen. And this is all by plan, just like the IMF is telling you. And it's funny, even more recently, the IMF put out an article, and this was under their CBDC discussions. It was how we get to a CBDC. And this is funny because if we look into this, we can see it titled Central Bank Digital Currency Adoption, Inclusive Strategies for Intermediaries and Users. And if we actually look at just the summary here, among the countries that have launched CBDCs or are conducting large-scale pilots, adoption remains slow and limited due to various challenges such as lack of public awareness and trust, preference for existing payment methods, and inadequate incentives for intermediaries. They want to start incentivizing users to actually utilize and adopt CBDCs. Central banks cannot take it for granted that CBDC, once launched, will be adopted and scaled up easily. So the hardest thing for them to do is actually get people to accept a CBDC. Well, how do they do this? Well, everything around us is getting extremely expensive because they are constantly inflating fiat currencies. So how can they incentivize? All right, well, all of a sudden they come in, they want to wipe your debt. if you use a CBDC, or they want to offer you, a monthly income utilizing a CBDC. I mean, think about it. Let's go all the way back to 2020 again. All of a sudden, stimulus checks are flying. Everyone's loving it. They're enjoying it. They, love the free money, but they don't think about what comes next. That's the problem with, a lot of the retail sector. They think in a tunnel vision. They don't see anything happening beyond what they are initially receiving. From the stimulus checks, we saw the markets start to erupt because liquidity was improving. People were going out and buying things. They were throwing money to the wind. And then all of a sudden, inflation hits. Everyone's complaining. Inflation is so bad, this, that. But they were so happy to receive those stimulus checks. And the same is going to happen with CBDCs. They're going to offer, a certain amount of money to utilize a CBDC, or they're going to give you, a monthly income using a CBDC. And then once it's massively adopted, all of a sudden, they're done with cash. You can only use a CBDC. Go and look at WorldCoin, right? Scanning your retina for like $10. People are running out to do that. This is why when we look at a CBDC, everyone's always saying like, all right, well, we could just deny using a CBDC. We don't even need to accept it. That's okay. But the vast majority will accept a CBDC because we have witnessed this in real time. And of course, the biggest names behind this are the ones that everyone has been following blindly, even around crypto with Bitcoin. Oh, BlackRock. Guess what? If we go back to January of 2023, banks were concerned about USDC, the stablecoin by Circle, and that it will become a backdoor CBDC with BlackRock's help. This was funny, but guess what? We now know that BlackRock is actually engaged on a lot of CBDC initiatives. For an example, Hong Kong. Hong Kong expanded EHKD CBDC work to include tokenized deposits. BlackRock was involved. BlackRock has a hand in almost all of this. Remember that BlackRock is tied right back to the World Economic Forum, and all of the big banks, think about it, some of the largest players out there are always tied back to these CBDC initiatives, and it's the biggest banks out there. Just like 2008, and just like every single other crisis in history, the big banks and the elites always benefit the most. That's why when we even go back to Silicon Bank, and we go back to Silvergate as well, guess what? JP Morgan was right there to swoop in, buy up these banks, become even bigger, and become an even more dominant force within the monopoly banking system. And when we think about CBDCs, everyone's always like, all right, well, CBDCs are going to completely cut banks out of the picture. No, it's going to make these big banks, especially, CBDCs, when we look at CBDCs, central bankers become a lot bigger. It's all about power and control. And when it comes to digital currencies, all of this, it's all by plan. Every single step that we have taken is leading us to the finale, which is CBDC mass adoption. That's why when we look at the sanctions, when we look at the executive order 14067, you can clearly see this all playing out. And even more recently with the Fed saying, all right, well, we're not even, close to pursuing a CBDC. We won't spy on Americans. We don't want to. And then we get the House banning a CBDC, even though on the backside of this, we get a stablecoin bill. It's very clear that they are manipulating the general public and they are lying to you. We are now already in the early phases of a completely digital financial system. They are constantly pushing this. Banks are continuing to experiment. We are seeing the map lighting up. I mean, if you look at the recent announcements around CBDCs, almost the entire world is now looking into a CBDC. I think it's like 98% of central banks. It is only a matter of time until we are transacting digitally only. Cash is going to essentially be a thing of the past. I would argue that we probably only have a limited amount of time. At most, maybe, a couple years. I know that a lot of people say like 6 to 10. I think that it happens sooner. They are going to push accelerants out there, just like we saw in the past with the pandemic, even with around, Russia, geopolitical tensions, right? A lot of these big events that everyone is, up in arms about, it's all to push their agenda. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord down in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.